here's how the math worked. In other words, I had 83 units at about $300. I had about 25,000 a month of revenue, about 300,000 annual revenue. And because I bought Glenhaven so cheaply, the expense ratio in a park typically runs about 30 to 40%. So I was netting off the 300 about 180 before my note payment. But my note payment was insanely low because it was 390,000 amortized on 30 years. So the bottom line is I was netting about 100,000 a year off of Glenhaven. There really wasn't any threat to that cash flow because my customers loved it. The homes never leave. And I had miles to go in raising the rent.
Welcome to the BiggerPockets Best Deal Ever show. I'm your lovable host, Ken Corsini, who with my wife, Anita, have flipped over 800 houses in Atlanta since 2005 and even have a show on HGTV. But this show isn't about us. It's about all the amazing real estate investors out there that are crushing it. It's about their stories, their best deals, how they sourced them, how they funded them, and what we can learn from their experiences. This is the Best Deal Ever show. Hey, this is Ken Corsini with the Best Deal Ever show. On today's episode, I am joined by Frank Rolfe. How you doing, Frank?
Doing great. Thanks, Ken.
Hey, so I checked you out online. You are the go-to guy for mobile home park investing. Is that right?
We like to think that, yes.
And where are you located?
I am located in St. Genevieve, Missouri.
And is that where you do most of your investing, or are you guys buying all over the place?
No, we're in 24 different states. So we, in fact, have nothing in St. Genevieve. Our closest is St. Louis.
Okay. Well, give us a quick background. How did you get into mobile home park investing?
Sure. Basically, I had got out of Stanford a year early, wanted to go to business school. Back then, to do a business school application, you would start a business and then write about that on your essay. So I started building billboards, never went back to business school, kept doing it for 14 years, ultimately sold that off to a public company, needed to reinvent myself. So I reinvented myself as a mobile home park person by buying my first park, Glenhaven, back in 96. And since then, myself and my partner, Dave Reynolds, we merged together in 2010. We're now the fifth largest owners of mobile home parks in the U.S. So we have about 20,000 lots in about 24 states.
20,000 lots. And how many different parks is that?
About 200 parks.
Holy moly. What sort of staff do you guys have to be able to manage that? Just curious.
We have about 400 people on the team. The majority of those are in the field. Each property has a manager. And then we have maintenance men, rehab crews. We have people in all kinds of different forms of functions in the field. And then back in the office, we have an accounting team, marketing team. We even have a legal team. So it's a very varied group. Most of our folks, though, are in the field.
Gotcha. I would even think with 200 properties, you'd have to have a pretty big central home base, like you said, for all those accounting needs and legal, I guess, as well.
If you really think about it, we're running a city of 60,000 people, basically.
Wow.
So only instead of being one finite area, it's spread out in a very large geographic area. So it makes it even harder to manage.
What a juggernaut to manage. So are you guys still in acquisition mode? Are you constantly in acquisition mode?
Yes, we're always in acquisition mode. We're always seemingly selling and buying. So that has been a common theme since it got into the business. Mm-hmm. And, so yes, we're always out there looking for new stuff.
And when you say selling, because obviously this is a buy and hold kind of business, what are you selling?
Well, it's not always buy and hold. In other words, we get a steady stream of offers on the stuff we have. Mm-hmm. And follow the Warren Buffett rule that if you don't sell it, you just bought it at the same price. Yeah. So when we offer for more than we would pay for it, we sell it.
That makes sense. Now, different people have different strategies for mobile home park investing. What's your primary strategy when you go into a park? Well,
our primary strategy obviously is to make money. We're trying to do a 3-point spread between interest rate and cap rate. Mm-hmm. That's a 20% cash on cash return. So to make our best shots of that happening, we focus on parks that have basically 4 core items: infrastructure, density, the correct location, and then also the correct age of homes. And that coupled with the economics makes us either want to buy it or not.
And when you go in, do you actually own all of the trailers? Or, some people go in there and keep the land, sell the trailer, or owner finance the trailers and just lease the lots?
Yeah, the business is classically built on just owning the land.
Mm-hmm.
The land is real property income. That's what gets capped and used in appraisals. And the homes are personal property. So we try and focus just on the land if we can.
Okay. So typically when you would acquire a park, you're not trying to own all the individual trailers.
Aggressively selling all the homes off.
You are. And what does that look like? You typically do like owner financing on those
Well, since they brought the SAFE Act, we can't owner finance any longer. So what we can do is for cash or rent. There's a third variant called rent credit, where you rent, give people a pathway to ownership by giving them credits for every month they pay.
I got you.
Another option is you can have a group like 21st Mortgage, which is a division of Berkshire Hathaway. They can step in and actually do the financing as an actual mortgage company.
Interesting. Well, so you've been at this for a while. You own a ton of parks and land and tons of people working for you. I'm sure there's one deal in particular that stands out as your best deal ever.
Yeah, and it's my best deal ever, not only because of the deal itself, but the path it put me on, and that's my first park, Glenhaven.
So let's talk about it. Where did you source? How and where did you source this?
It was sourced very accidentally. I was calling around to people after I sold the billboard company to see what they did. I was trying to get, I was on a fact-finding tour of what business was worth investing in.
Mm-hmm.
So I called people in all different facets because I had built 300 billboards on 300 different businesses. One that I remembered vividly was my building of 2 billboards on Glenhaven Mobile Home Park in Dallas. So I called the owner, Ron, and said, "Hey, Ron, I sold the billboard company, and I'm curious how your business works." And he said, "Well, why not just find out for yourself? I'll sell it to you right now on the phone. Give me $400,000 with $10,000 down. I'll carry $390,000 for 30 years, and you can just jump right in it right now." And so I, knowing where this was heading, said, "Well, so how much are you losing a month, Ron?"
Yeah, right.
Do something on the phone. And he said, "I'm losing $2,000 a month." And that's what got me in. So I thought, well, all I have at risk is $10,000. Hurdle 1, can I solve the negative $2,000 a month? So I'll give it a shot. I'll close on it and see if I can solve the $2,000 is step 1. If I can't, give it back to Rod. If I can, I'll go on to the next step. So that's how I got in.
Interesting. So you obviously had a level of confidence you were going to be able to solve his cash flow problem.
I had a level of confidence that I had a shot at it. I didn't know what his problem was, but I knew that the park was very, very poorly managed. And so I thought that perhaps he was missing something that I could figure out.
So what did that look like for you? You put the $10,000 down and then just jumped right in and started doing just some fact finding.
Right. Found a title company, structured the deal, put the $10,000 down, got a note, did a traditional closing, didn't do all the right pieces, didn't do a phase 1 environmental, didn't do a survey, none of the things a normal person would do because I knew nothing about real estate.
Right.
And so then I bought the stupid thing and started to figure out the $2,000, and I figured it out almost immediately in a quick review of his financials. He had a cable agreement where he was providing cable free to all residents, which was costing about $2,000 a month, yet he was only half occupied. So he was paying $1,000 of it for lots where there were no humans. And then on the other 1,000, I noticed they all had little satellite dishes, or most had satellite dishes. So no one was even using the cable. So I went to the cable company and said, "When does this contract end?" And they said, "Oh, it's already ended. It's a month to month." So I said, "Let's cancel it." They said, "You can't cancel it. You'll turn off all your customers' cable." I said, "I'm cool with that. I don't think they're using you anyway." So I sent a letter out to the half of the population of the park that actually was there saying, "We're dropping the cable." I had almost no pushback. I think I got a call from like 2 people, told them, "Hey, just do like your neighbors, get Dish or DirecTV." And that was the end of it. And that one move, I had solved the negative.
That's crazy. Well, just curious. So how big was the park? How many trailers?
It was 83 lots.
Okay.
And when I bought it, it had probably about 40 occupied.
So, well, that in and of itself, there was an opportunity to increase occupancy.
Well, there were two big things to be improved on. One was occupancy, which could be doubled, but the rents were insanely low because Ron had never kept up with Dallas rents. So when I bought Glenhaven, the rents were about $175 to $195 a month. And at that time, the market rents were closer to about $395 to $425. Now, I did not know that when I bought it because I knew nothing about mobile home parks. That was a little extra plus I found as I progressed. But initially, I thought it was just solving the $2,000 a month negative and sitting on it. and slowly raising rents and slowly raising occupancy. I had no idea I could do stuff so fast with.
Wow. So when you figured that out, how quickly did you change rents and what did that look like?
Well, there was another thing that happened, which was just pure luck. So I buy Glenhaven. I office out there for a year, a little single wide, learn the business. And my mother calls me up and said, "Did you read in the paper about the mobile home park that's closing down near downtown?" I said, "No." So she sent me the clipping. I called the name of the park. It was being redeveloped to build like a Home Depot. So I drove down to the park and said, "Hey, I've got 43 lots vacant and you're shutting down. Can I have 43 residents?" And he said, "Man, can you ever? Because I have to pay the cost to move these people out." That was part of my agreement with the city of Dallas to get the zoning to build the Home Depot. So I got to find them all a home. So if you want 43, you got it. And I'll even pay to move them to your park. So
oh my goodness.
I'm going around trying to match home sizes to lot sizes because I didn't have a lot of large lots. So most of my lots are mostly smaller in Glenhaven. I'm trying to find the 2-bedroom, 1-baths, not the 3-bedroom, 2-baths. So I did take a few of those. And introducing people to the idea of Glenhaven. I made a little flyer, and next thing you know, I started moving them in. And it overnight changed the entire demographics and the whole vision of Glenhaven. So I went prior to this from mostly carnival workers and all kinds of misfits to Glenhaven because it was so unbelievably cheap. Now I had imported in a huge number of families. And as soon as I brought all these families in who had good jobs and drove nice cars with nice people, my misfits all collectively came to me and said, "It's either them or us. We are not going to live at a Glenhaven that's this kind of sanitized family environment." So I said, "Well, goodbye to you guys." And that started the exodus of the 40 that I had. So now they started pouring out of the park. But that was okay because as they abandoned their homes, I went in and renovated them and sold them to friends and family of the group that had just come in. So it literally was the catalyst to the entire park changing over completely, everything about it. It went from being a horrible land of the misfits to a nice, safe, clean, place for people of all forms and descriptions. They weren't all families. Some were seniors. We had a bit of everything. But now they could actually be proud to live there, and it made my life much easier.
That's amazing that the misfits were the ones that didn't want the clean families rather than the other way around.
If you saw the misfits, the first thing you noticed when you went to Glenhaven was in the back corner, they'd built a amateur wrestling facility out of plywood and particle board. They had their own wrestling ring and then these little makeshift concession stands. And it was kind of like a Keep Austin Weird kind of theme. They wanted Glenhaven to be this literally land of the misfits. I literally had carnival workers with carny tattoos on their knuckles in
what?
And the problem was this is what Ron had created by having basically no rules and no management. Is if you couldn't live anywhere else, you could live at Glenhaven. No credit screening, no criminal screening. Just come on over and enjoy our wrestling ring. So that's the environment that they desired to keep.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. So that was the best thing that could happen to you is these people wanting to leave and you getting fresh people in there. And I guess none of them owned their trailers then? It was all basically clean out your stuff?
Many of them did. Many of them, these trailers were originally owned by Ron or still owned by Ron. I had rentals in Glenhaven too.
Yeah.
I had RVs. The RVs just turned on the engine or connected up to their pickup truck and drove off. But the people in the homes, it cost about $5,000 to move a home. So not a single one moved their homes. Actually, I take that back. One guy tried to move his home with a pickup truck. Didn't work. But yes, the homes ended up sitting there. The ones that the park already owned, I simply went in and renovated. The others I took through abandonment and then renovated.
Okay, gotcha. So what did that look like in terms of raising rents then? As these people, you brought new people in, those people left, what did you raise them to?
Well, the park that the other people were at already was near market rent. So their rents were already like in the 300s.
Okay.
Jumped immediately upon their arrival to the new market rent I determined, which I can't recall now. I think I went up to like 300 or 295 or something.
Okay.
Well, they were at the new rent. Then as I redid these homes, I put those back in at the new rent.
Okay.
So I was able to move the rents up very quickly.
And so did all this happen in the first year?
No, this happened the first year. The first 6 to 7 months was nothing but abject misery of me trying to build a business around the misfits.
Yeah.
But towards about month 7 or 8 is when all this went down.
Okay.
And the renewed promise that actually there was an industry here, and it wasn't just all about babysitting misfits.
Gotcha. So, and that over the course of the first 2 years, basically move the misfits out, move the new people in, and raise rents.
By the end of year 2, certainly everything had changed.
Yeah.
So it was no longer, me going down to Glenhaven, wondering what stupid thing would go on today. But it was me going down to Glenhaven to kind of be amazed at what had been created from such a horrible mess earlier.
Unbelievable. So what did that cash flow look like for you? I'm curious. You put in, it was $400,000 purchase, put in 10 grand. And then by end of year 2, what did that look like?
Okay. So what happened was I bought it for $410,000 down, but then I had to start feeding it with capital improvements and to renovate homes. I also at one point lost all my natural gas, which was probably my most terrifying moment in business history, because in the billboard business, things are very never that stressful because no one really needs a billboard. It's not critical. I had issues with billboards building them. I might hit a water line or, a crane might break, but it was nothing big.
Right.
What happened in Glenhaven was I get a call from my on-site manager, Stephanie, that we've lost all gas. And it turned out we'd lost it because the gas company turned us off because we had leaks we did not know. They wouldn't turn us back on until we could pressure test. We failed the pressure test, which means I had all my residents now, all these families and people, they had no heat, no hot water, and no way to cook in the middle of winter, and it was like 20 degrees out. And I did not know what to do. And I thought, well, you know what? After everything I've done, I'm going to give it back to Ron. So I called up Ron and said, Ron, I can't do this anymore because I thought I was at the end of the movie, and now you've hit me with this mess. And he said, you know what? I already knew this would happen. I have to be honest with you. I knew this was going to happen. So I said, well, Ron, what's your plan? He goes, well, don't give it back to me. I don't want it back. He said, here's what you do. Call up Northwest Propane in Dallas and tell them you need to start bringing in the propane tanks, which I did. We then had a cliffhanger scene because the city tried to stop them from unloading the tanks, saying it was illegal in Dallas to have propane if you have natural gas on the street. So we had that fight, that legal challenge. It blew over in 2 days. The city backed down because apparently there was a pending rule in state legislature about them having a monopoly over propane, and they didn't want to have this as an example. So they backed down and said, okay, you can put the tanks in. So I had to put the tanks in. That cost me, as I recall, $60,000. So the bottom line is I had poured not just my 10 down originally, but in reformatting Glenhaven, I had poured about another 100. Now, Ron took part of that off the note because the natural gas was something that he should have told me in diligence and didn't, and he didn't want to get sued for fraud. So we negotiated that down. But the bottom line is I ended up with about $500,000 in Glenhaven total.
And so what did that end up looking like once kind of everything had been renovated, everything sort of settled down to end of year 2, all the new people? I guess you're probably at 100% occupancy.
Here's how the math worked. In other words, I had 83 units at about $300. I had about $25,000 a month of revenue, about $300,000 annual revenue. And because I bought Glenhaven so cheaply, the expense ratio in a park typically runs about 30 to 40%. So I was netting off the 300 about 180 before my note payment. But my note payment was insanely low because it was $390,000 amortized on 30 years. So the bottom line is I was netting about $100,000 a year off of Glenhaven. And there really wasn't any threat to that cash flow because my customers loved it. The homes never leave. And I had miles to go in raising the rent. That's what made it a good deal, because you could literally just live off Glenhaven. And because Glenhaven was now doing so well, I started buying more parks under thinking I had found the ultimate business model. I would just repeat the Glenhaven story over and over and over. And so that's how I got into the business, basically.
How interesting. Well, I'm sure as you found out, they probably don't all go that smoothly.
Absolutely correct. There were good ones that were not as good. There were some that were theoretically better and some that were worse.
Yeah. Well, so this is a phenomenal story. And for you being the first one right out of the gates, obviously that inspired you to do more. There's people that are watching this that would love to get into this space. What advice would you give them after all these years of experience?
Okay. Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to learn what you're doing. And when I say learn what you're doing, like any hobby, you're never going to be any good until you're smart enough to know what is an opportunity from what is not an opportunity. So you can't just jump into it, excuse me, and say, well, gee, I'm going to be the trailer park king. Where's a trailer park to buy? There's more mechanics to it than that.
Right.
You find stuff with what I would call institutionally boned properties. So in other words, that you can get a loan on that people will buy in the future. You got to have a permit. You got to have utilities that work. You got to have all kinds of infrastructure. There's density issues. A lot of parks were built back in the 50s. And all parks were built mostly between the 50s and the 70s. But there was a period in the early 50s when they were building these things under the assumption that the biggest mobile home out there would be 30 feet. That's what it was back then, and 8 feet wide. And today, the lots are so small, you can't put mobile homes on them. So density is an issue. Location is key. There's two locations that work. Glen Haven is one, kind of that gritty urban metro location, the same thing that fuels millennials to want to live downtown. And big schools too. All Americans like it. And the other is the nice suburb, the suburb that has the nice school system, nice shops, because people who live in mobile home parks are no different than people who live in stick-built homes. They all want the same stuff. They want to have the good schools, no crime, the nice restaurant down the street. So you want those two key locations. You want to have a park that is not all new homes nor all old homes. You want to have a mixture of homes because you want homes that are all paid for. So you want homes that are pre-1990 or early 1990s or older to be the bulk of what you got, maybe 70 or 80%. And then you want homes that might have mortgages to be the other amount. You don't want to have a situation where you have homes with lots of mortgages because that's going to harm their ability to pay lot rent. And you add those things together with the economics and then you have something. But it's not, I drive by mobile home parks all the time along the highway that no one should touch. I just drove by some yesterday driving from our parks in Kansas City to St. Louis. There's some old, large mobile home parks along Interstate 70 between the two. There's no market there. There's nothing going on. So all parks are created equal. You want to stick with the ones you can make money with.
What an amazing career to have started with such a cool first park and then to do as many as you have and build the empire you have. Very inspiring. Frank, thanks so much for coming on today. It was fantastic.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Thanks for listening to the Best Deal Ever show, brought to you by BiggerPockets. If you've been energized, entertained, or enlightened by today's show, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Ken Corsini, or check us out online at redbarnhomes.com. And don't forget, one man's best deal ever may be the inspiration you need to create your next best deal. So, hope to see you on the next episode.